I often think of like a cell dividing.
Yeah.
You know, like you start out your business and it's just you.
Yep.
And then you divide off part of that and you make that into a role. And then you've got like left this half, which is now a whole. And then you're still doing maybe like 3 or 4 people's jobs. And then you bring a new person on, you take off part of that and it goes to them and that becomes a role. Yeah. And so that would happen. And so
what does it take to scale to 7 figures and beyond and grow with purpose? Tune in for stories, strategies, and tactics from founders and business leaders who've been there and done that.
Today, I'm really excited to be catching up with my good friend, Steve Osborn. Steve is a marketing veteran. Steve, you've been doing this for a very, very long time, haven't you?
Really long time. I think, I think I first got into it around like 1999.
Wow, 1999.
That was like back when like we were convincing people they needed to have a website.
Was that just before or after the dot com
I reckon it was
crash?
around the time of like the sort of .com boom / crash.
Yeah.
And I was like too young to invest in anything. I wish I could go back now and invest in something and then get out before it crashed.
Yeah.
But yeah, like it was really interesting. I remember like going to client meetings and having to say, there's this percentage of Australians using the internet.
Yep.
Like there's this percentage that, that are actually buying things online and like, you don't just need to be in the yellow pages. Like these are some other things, ways you can like reach people through websites. And people are like, I don't know if my company needs a website. It's just been really interesting just to see the shift from then to now, where it's like it's kind of like just the entry level now.
Yeah.
Your company needs a website. Your company needs social media. Your company needs like a whole bunch of like coordinated, cohesive marketing just to help drive it forward.
Yeah. I think back then the yellow pages was still an actual book with pages where you could turn around and
yeah, I think it still is. I think they still deliver it. But I remember back then like the yellow pages or maybe it was the white pages. They were like one of the first to shift.
Yep.
And they were charging companies like money to go in the yellow pages and going online.
Yeah.
And it was like this big directory.
Yeah.
And like anyone under the age of, I don't know, 35, maybe 40, probably has never used it before.
Yeah.
Has probably never gone to like yellowpages.com.au and looked for things because like why would you,
Yeah.
Whereas that was like the business directory before Google became, the directory.
Before Google became a thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I've noticed, when I was doing my homework about you, I realized you've done everything from, from being in marketing, working in marketing and actually excelling at TAFE.
Yeah. So I started my career as a trainee in 99 at TAFE.
Yep.
Interactive multimedia, doing a lot of like educational products for TAFE. And then from there, did some training to teach. And then so I started teaching. It was really interesting. I tried to get into graphic design straight out of high school, which was like 97. Back then, it was just like super competitive. Everyone wanted to be a graphic designer. And there just weren't enough spots. I remember like I had to go to this drawing test to actually get in. And there was 3 rooms full of people, like huge rooms full of people doing a drawing test for I think like 25 spots at TAFE.
Oh, wow.
So it was like really competitive to get in. And so I didn't get in. But then by the time I was 20 or 21, I was actually teaching the class how to actually use like the tools that I've been using for the last few years in my traineeship. And so one of my first lessons was actually teaching people that I would have been in class with, so the same age. It was really interesting. And then from there went on to work for a few years teaching interactive multimedia, teaching interface design, graphic design, a range of different things. A lot of like TAFE level was like very hands-on, like how to use the tools. So doing a lot of that, and I just kept seeing students leave, and I kept thinking to myself, I want to leave. Like I want to go get a career in what I'm teaching. And so then went out, and it was really competitive at the time. Couldn't get a job in it, so I got a job in something that was kind of in that, doing marketing for a real estate company. Sort of being more on the client side. Had some really good results there. Moved to a bigger real estate agency. Had some really good results there, and then just decided to go out and start my own company from there.
Yeah. How did you make the transition from working for other people to working for yourself? Was it a case of building up a little bit of saving? Had you sort of like done enough research on the market to sort of feel like I'm ready to jump ship, or how was the transition?
Yeah, just about killed myself doing it. So I found someone that was doing like some really good advertising in the different magazines at the time, and it just happened that they were recommending a bunch of people to us, so that worked out really well. And we built up a few like key referrers that referred work to us. So we had a lot of incoming work, and it was also like very early in the kind of like social media days. By early, I mean like 2012.
Yeah.
And so you'd run ads, and lead gen actually worked really well back then. And so we had a lot of leads coming in, which was good.
Okay.
But time to follow that up was really hard because I was working a full-time job. And so for 2 years, I worked a full-time job, worked in the business. And so I'd get up at 4 a.m., work in the business till like 6. And then kids would wake up, I'd make them breakfast, help them get ready for school.
Oh, wow.
And then take them to school, go to work. And then I'd work. And then at lunchtime, I'd work on my business. And then after work, I'd come home, have dinner, and then work to, I don't know, like whatever time I needed to, 10, 11, 12 at night, go to bed and repeat, and then squeeze in some work on the weekend. And I did that for 2 years, just about killed myself.
Oh, wow.
And didn't pay myself any money, just put all the money aside, and then had enough money to go out and do it. And in the meantime, we got employees in the business to like do work. I think I was like a third employee in my own company, which is nuts.
Oh, wow.
So there was like 2 full-time people and a part-time person who were working for me, but I was still working for someone else because I was just scared to jump ship. But the crazy thing about jumping ship was as soon as you jump ship, all of a sudden you've got all this extra time for business development, all this extra time for networking, and the company grew really rapidly after that.
Yeah, I think it's that whole idea of like, because a lot of people go through that mindset of like, would you rather pay yourself or would you rather take that money and put it on someone else who potentially could make you more money, and then potentially that money, that extra profit you're making could potentially become something you pay yourself. I think that's what a lot of people struggle with.
Yeah, for me, I just wanted to make sure that we had enough money to cover all the bills and to cover all the wages. And it's funny, like I found a note file in my phone, and I had like a goal of like doing $10,000 a month, and I thought, get to 10,000 a month. And now it's like if we did 10,000 a month, I'd be broke. Like it's way bigger now. It just doesn't. It's funny like how limited your mindset is when you start. And I think once you start breaking through those barriers, it really changes.
Yeah. And you talked about like breaking barriers and challenging your mindset. During those early days when you start to grow the company, how do you cope? How are you coping with that growth? Was it a case of like, okay, people are, the work is coming in, and then at the same time you have to balance between bringing people in and kind of growing the company? How was the juggle between all those different things during those initial stages of growth?
Yeah, it was a real challenge because you're very much like I often think of like a cell dividing. You start out your business and it's just you, and then you divide off part of that and you make that into a role, and then you've got like left this half, which is now a whole, and then you're still doing maybe like 3 or 4 people's jobs, and then you bring a new person on, you take off part of that and it goes to them, and that becomes a role. And so that would happen, and so very quickly I made sure I was off the tools as much as possible. So not doing any client work, and focusing predominantly on bringing work in. I'm doing so a lot of sales, a lot of business development, speaking at conferences, a lot of networking, a lot of emails, a lot of calls, because we had a lot of leads coming in. So just calling people, booking those appointments, chatting to them about what their requirements are, making sure that we can sort of solve those requirements for them. But then at the same time, you've also got all the running of the business too. Like you've got your BAS that you need to do. You've got to maintain your books in Xero. You've got to do your HR. You've got to do payroll. So I still have a lot of that stuff today. But I've got like a really strong administrator with Charlotte who does like a lot of the admin side. We've got we don't touch our bookkeeping. Like I definitely open up Xero and stuff like that, but Charlotte does all the invoicing, and our bookkeeper does all of our BAS and stuff like that. And and we've got like a really strong team of designers and web designers and content writer and account managers that really take care of all that client communication. Actually, that was one thing I did a lot in the early days too, a lot of account management. Whereas now I don't do account management anymore.
Okay.
I do a little bit, but it's more on a strategic level and a sort of business advisory level. Yeah.
Okay. And I'm going to come back to that because something I want to dig into. What I'm interested to learn is, as a creative.
Yes.
Most people start these kind of businesses because you're very good at creative with what you do, and then you see an opportunity to do that. How did you go with letting go of the tools? Because I think that's the one thing that a lot of people, you probably think you're better than him, you think you can do it better, or for a lot of creative type businesses, the whole idea of designing these beautiful things is a bit, I must say, it's a passion. It would have been a passion for you as well.
Yeah.
How do you sort of let go of like, oh, but I want to, is it like, what goes in your mind to have that realization, okay, I need to let go, even though I like the creative bit?
I think, I think every single time I've ever let go, the person I've let go of it to has done a better job than I did.
Yeah.
And so now, like letting go is not a problem because I know they're probably going to be better. And when you interview, you employ, like I try and employ people that I think are going to be, that have skills that I don't have.
Yeah.
And so letting go is not an issue anymore.
Yeah.
I think at the start, it probably was to a certain degree, but as soon as I realized that, like I can let go of something and it gets done at a better quality than I was doing it.
Yeah.
It makes so much sense. But also like they're not doing it at a better quality because they're technically better. It's that they're more focused.
Yeah. That's
like
all
if they're this is their one job here and that involves like doing say design work, whereas you've got someone who's, doing HR and they're doing, like they're doing the books and they're doing sales and they're doing account management and they're trying to squeeze that in.
Yeah.
Like their design work's not going to be very thought through. It's not going to be well researched. So, dividing and letting someone else do it makes sense.
Yeah, I can totally relate to that part. I remember when I was running a software development company.
Yeah.
I was such a good coder and I used to be really good at coding. And it's not until I brought it this young kid. He was fresh out of uni, very, very green. And then, obviously the fact that he was very focused and was very hungry, within 2 years, he could kick my ass any single day of the week. He would write better code than I do, solve more complex problems than I do. Good. So for me, that was a big sign of, okay, mind, it's not time to let go, because as much as I love the thing, someone else can do it a lot more better. And I think that's a big misconception that most of us have. So going back to the part where you talked about, building the team, and now you're focused on more, coaching and consulting and stuff like that. How do you feel like your leadership has evolved? Like what's really helped you evolve like a leader now that you've got staff, you've got a lot of clients, and there's a lot of people that are, for lack of a better word, depending on you for that direction. What's helped you evolve as a leader, and how has it?
Yeah, I think direction is a really interesting thing from a leadership point of view. And I try and focus a lot on like, what does the business actually need to do? Yeah. And that probably then translates into we need to sign up certain types of work or certain types of retainers or certain types of projects. Where are we at in the scale of that compared to our competitors? Where are we at internally? And so having a really good idea of where I want to go. Like we've got a strategy meeting that on Tuesday after the long weekend. So. We do our strategy annually, and I used to do it calendar year, but I've moved it now to be financial year because it just aligns to the budget a lot better. Yeah. And you tend to work out your budgets in a financial year anyway. Yeah. And then so every quarter, what we're doing now is catching up and just checking in on our strategy. And so we define that, we work out that strategy together. So I've got some like pretty clear, I've got a clear goal and then some like objectives for the company under that, and then we talk about that, and we have a workshop that we go through that really defines if these are the things that we want to do, then these are some of the projects that we need to take on, and like some of that comes from me, some of that comes from the team, and then we've got a process about sort of working out which ones would have a bigger impact, which ones are achievable, which ones are not achievable, and a bit of a rating system that then becomes like a series of projects that we do that then drives the business forward. And so we're reviewing that on Tuesday next week, looking at our marketing. And I think like doing that and listening to the team, which is a big part of leadership, just listening to them, hearing what they have to say. And then from there, putting together an outline of, this is what it is that we need to do. And that's sort of like more leadership on a company level and a direction level. When it comes to like brand work, I've got some really strong designers. I don't need to be giving them direction, like change the color or move this here. Like they can talk about contrast, they can talk about layouts, like way better than I can. And so I try and step out of that. I try and just advocate from a client point of view. So like from a client, like I know that this is what their goals are, and I try and think about how can I actually add to that. And then from like a training point of view internally, a lot of that is just looking at where someone's at in their, their career and where they're wanting to go to. And one of the sort of key values that we have is just really around almost like our company being almost like a choose your own adventure book, where, like I've got, I had someone come in as a junior designer. They then went on doing to do a lot of motion animation. Then they moved into the studio manager role. Giving people the flexibility to actually grow into the space that they want. And we've even got someone at the moment who started out as a senior designer. They still are. And they really saw an opportunity for us to push the company further in the sort of like website space. And so, I've been like getting him to do some courses and some training with other people and like giving him more chances on using those skills on certain projects that really like will help grow the company, but also help him grow internally. So a big part, I think, of leadership is just listening to your people, understanding where the company wants to go, and like bringing that together, and just knowing that you don't have all the answers, and you try get it right, but you won't always get it right, and don't be too hard on yourself if you don't.
Yeah, absolutely. What's been your best approach in terms of building the team, especially building a team that is team of creative people that can also deliver some really good stuff? So how do you go around like finding them and making sure that they're able to sort of get in there and hit the ground running? Is it a case of you've got a good recruitment system, your systems of handling, onboarding, and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, it's really similar to just any business process. You work out what mistakes you've made, and then you add new things in. So I guess we first look at like, what is it that we need this person to do? Yeah. And then once we know what we need them to do, then we build out the role, and then we can advertise for that role. And then I try and, in the interviews, we usually do them in 3 different stages. So the first stage is just coming in, having a chat, making sure that we're aligned with them, they're aligned with us. The next stage is getting more of the team involved, and them asking more of the like key questions around that, around like their skill set and around their experience. And the part that they're not aware of is that I'm actually sending the team in there just to see if they think they would like that person, they could get along with that person. Because ultimately, like, we've got a team of 8 people. When you get a team of that size, you need everyone to get along well. And we've had people in the past that just haven't gotten along with certain people, and it creates a lot of tension in such a small team. So just ensuring that they're sort of signing off on those people as well is really helpful. We do a skills test as well, where we have a short project that we get them to do. It's not for a client-based project. Like some agencies will get you to do work, and it's actually for a work that a client's paying for. We don't do that. We give them a job that really just tests their layout, tests that they can actually export a file in a format that can follow a brief, that they can compose stuff, and they can actually use the tools they've said they've used. And we do that because we had someone once come in with a portfolio of work that was incredible. We gave him the job, and he could not design to save his life. So, and what we worked out was, I think he catfished us with his portfolio. And so that little test, people should be able to do that in an hour. We give them 3 hours, and it's a time test. And they do it in their own home. So we say what time you're starting. And then if they say 3 p.m, we have their files and the email scheduled to send at 3 p.m. They've got till 6 to send it back to us. And, they've got 3 hours to do it, but you can do it in an hour quite easily. And if they can't do it, and about half the people that we send it to can't do it. So, and by can't do it, they won't read the brief properly. And so if they don't read the brief properly, then, they don't have great attention to detail, which is something we're looking for. So we test them, and if they pass, then we have them back into that final interview, and we make a decision from there. And we usually find people that get to that final interview. If we're not giving them a job, someone else is giving them a job pretty soon. Because they're usually really good candidates.
If someone gets to that point, definitely they'll be good. One thing I want to touch on is you run a professional service business, obviously, where you have to go out and get some work out and then bring it in. And then obviously hire people to sort of fulfill that work. What's your approach to deciding, okay, this is when I need to get someone in? Do you have to sort of build that demand first, or can you sort of project and think, okay, based on the way last year went, or like, what's your method of deciding I need to sort of bring in people here? Or is it a case of you bring in the projects and
Yeah.
What's your philosophy? How do you manage that whole process? Because I think if companies don't manage, people who are in the service-based businesses, if they don't manage that process well, it could potentially mark them up a bit.
Yeah, so I
Yeah.
think a lot of that goes back to your strategy. And so
Yeah.
when we go through our strategy at the start of the financial year, we look
Yeah.
at revenue. What are we trying to achieve? And like I know my staff want to get paid more every year, so the
Yeah.
company needs to make more money this year than it did last year.
Yeah.
So like we look at things like revenue, and then you kind of reverse engineer that. So that then means that there's probably X amounts coming in from retainer work. And if you want to increase that, then you probably need to sign up X amount of retainers. X amounts coming in from brand projects, maybe X is coming from campaigns, a certain amount's coming in from some of the website work that we might do, a certain amount might be coming in from speaking or consulting and things like that. So working out what those targets are, and then like to me, sales is an everyday thing. So I'm calling people every day.
Yeah.
The company's always sent emails out. So we do like a weekly email that we send out to our database. And we've always, everyone that's ever got in contact with us goes on our database. I think it's up to about 7,000 people now.
That's very good.
And then we send a weekly email. It used to, and the kind of cheat code in that is that we used to send like 4 different emails a month. What we did was we changed it. So our weekly email, if people didn't open it, we just resent the same email the following week. And we just changed the subject line. And no one's even, in the whole, I don't know, like 10 years we've been doing that, no one's picked up that we've been doing that. And so one might be around a blog, another one might be like around a project. So we try and send out at least one project a month on email, and that ultimately goes out to that database of people who have engaged with us at some point. And then people that are opening those emails just get a phone call from me. So it's that simple. And because we use ActiveCampaign, it shows us who's opening stuff. You just call those people and just keep it pretty conversational and light, like, hey John, had you on a database for a while, just want to check in, make sure you guys are happy over at whatever your company is, with your brand or website. If there's any, is there anything on the pipeline that we can support you with? And people will often say, I'm thinking about doing some brand work, but that's in 6 months from now. And then we'll just talk about what they want to achieve. I'll make a note to follow them up in 5 months and do that. So to me, it's just like an everyday stuff has to happen for sales.
So you're staying top of mind, and then obviously that becomes a basis of getting more conversations in. Obviously, growing a business to the size you've gotten yours into requires you to have a lot of skills and knowledge that you obviously build over a period of time. What's been your approach to acquiring skills or upskilling yourself, or has it been like a bit of good old try and error and see what works? What I'm trying to understand is a lot of people, they struggle. At some point in time, you have to learn how to be a good operator of a business. And obviously that requires skills. Are you signing up to mentorship? Are you taking courses? How are you sharpening those skills that you need to sort of keep the business humming the way it is? Because I think one thing I've admired about you, and I think I met you back in 2015, and I still remember even back then you were still very switched on. In terms of like you're pretty switched on operator back in 2015, because that's the one thing I really admired about you. And when I think the first time we caught up, we were talking about Infusionsoft. For those of you who don't know about Infusionsoft, it was like the beast of marketing automation before a lot of products came up and superseded it. But how are you? What's been the approach to acquiring skills to become a good operator?
I try and learn every day. Like I've got a room at home, but my wife calls it my gentleman's room. But it's just a room that has no TV in it, and it has a couch and two nice side chairs and a fireplace and a bunch of books and a bunch of whiskey and gin bottles. It's just a nice room to sit in, and I go there every day and read. So after work, go home, have dinner, go to that room, read. So I do that every day, and I find that helps just keep my skills going when it comes to understanding what, like, branding and what's happening in my industry. I know with my social media content, I try and talk about what's happening on a marketing level. If I can do that, then it keeps I can talk about what's happening with AI at the moment in marketing, just because like I've been seeing like companies like Coke and Adidas and how they've been using AI in their marketing and been talking about that in my content. So I try and make the content that I talk about focused on what it is that I actually want to learn.
Yeah.
And then there's certain skills that I want to pick up. So I did, I don't know if you know Vince Gang. I did his... Vin Gang, yeah. He does
the speaking course.
The speaking course, yeah.
Bit of a shout out for Vin. He's I did his original, when he started doing the stage workshop.
Yeah.
I did the very original one when he did the first one in Adelaide.
Yeah.
And it was life changing.
Yeah, so I did that workshop as well. I did it, I want to say maybe like 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's been phenomenal. Like just understanding the actual process behind speaking on stages, and like just that one piece of training over 2 days has just been absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah.
So since then I've gone on to actually work out that when you are giving presentations to big audiences, it's ultimately a rehearsal that you're doing. It reminds me a lot of Year 12 drama, where you're learning your lines.
Yeah.
And then once you learn your lines, then you need to learn where to stand on stage.
Yeah.
And then like your visuals, need to look good as well. But I think most people spend all their time on their visuals, whereas it's actually a performance. And so actually understanding how to use your voice and how to use your body and how to use the stage and how to engage with the audience, like that was fantastic. And so that was a key thing that I learned. And I try. I think I'm just curious. Like I'll speak to people that I don't have skills in and just talk to them about what it is that they do, and they'll tell me, open up and tell me. There's some things that I'll dive deeper in. Like I've gone on and done a bunch of like training around performance marketing just because I know that wasn't a strength. Just to understand that. Not that I'm going to do it, but I just wanted to understand that. And that can be as simple as I'm at the gym going for a run, and instead of like listening to music, I'm just that weirdo that's got like LinkedIn Learning on a screen in front of him. So that's kind of like my approach. Is just doing stuff like that, just to keep your skills relevant.
What's been in learning? What are you finding is a good mix? Because I'm finding for me, I'm always trying to balance between learning the actual industry. So like now we're both in marketing, so learning marketing skills and like polishing up and finding out what is happening, and then versus that, but then also keeping on top of like business skills, like listening to business podcasts on business strategy and growth. What do you find is a good healthy mix for you? Because obviously at the end of the day, yes, we want to keep on top of our industry so we can have the latest insight, but then at the same time, you also want to try and stay in business and become a good operator, I guess. What do you find is a good mix for you?
I found for me, what's worked for me is focusing on skills that not as many people do. And, so I spoke about performance marketing before. I wanted to understand that because I wanted to be able to talk about it better to clients. I didn't want to understand it to do it. And, to me, my job is talking to clients, helping them make good decisions, helping them align, their marketing goals with their business goals. Getting like a management team aligned and all thinking in the same direction, and all seeing the company in the same way, and all seeing their customers the same way, and seeing their marketing in the same way, and like getting people aligned around the same thing. And so what I've tried to transition to is more of the skills that people aren't doing. So there's a lot of people who are doing the tactical things. Like there's a million people doing websites, doing social media, doing email marketing, like all of that. And I've done a lot of that. But for me, I'm now focusing more on what are the skills that I need to have. So public speaking. And, so I need to be able to do that. I need to be able to run a workshop. I need to be able to do consulting in a structured way. So just learning that, and then going through that process then becomes work for the agency to do afterwards.
Okay. Are you doing a lot of workshops at the moment?
We do. Clients? We do workshops, and we're always trying to evolve and push them.
Is that within the real estate space where because the real estate is your predominant market at the moment, or have you sort of
really interesting? So we're going through I was going through our clients in preparation for our strategy. And one of our key objectives that fell under our strategy about 2 years ago was to diversify our client base, because it was very heavy in property. And so what we've done is we've been doing that in the background, and we went through all of our customers, and almost half of the new ones that came on were outside of property. So most people don't don't realize that. I think
Yeah.
the agency, if you go to our website and look at our portfolio, you'll see that there's like a bit of a property flavor to it.
Yeah.
But and then the people in property will pick up on that. People outside of property might not see it as much. And so we've been really strategic about doing that.
Okay. Just more on that. What was the decision to try and diversify the client base? Because I guess the big message that is being preached today about businesses, you gotta niche down and decide an industry you want to pick in and go all in. What's been your thought behind, niching down could be a risk or maybe not, or diversifying your client base?
Well, I mean, half of our clients come from one property sector, so I'd still say that's niche.
Yeah,
but,
absolutely.
I remember when we started the company, we kept saying it's real estate specific, and and we would, it would direct people away from us, but then it would direct people to us. But then what I found out, there was two reasons for changing it. The first was that I had some really good staff who would work in the company, and I could see they'd have a big career with us, but they get bored always doing property stuff.
Yes.
And so being able to bring in other work for them lets me retain like really talented staff for longer, which then lets us grow the company and do better work, and then pitch for higher work and keep them longer and pay them better wages, and all of that. It's like a revolving thing. And then the other reason behind changing, I think, was we wanted to diversify because the property sector was really cyclical. And I noticed that when COVID happened. Like when COVID happened, we had 70% of our clients pause all work with us within 2 weeks.
Wow.
Like 2 weeks. Like every phone call I got, I just knew what the conversation was going to be. We just want to pause our work. And then as soon as the payments came in from the government, all of a sudden they wanted to spend their money again, and so that was good. From there, but it kind of made me aware that there was a bit of a blind spot we had in the business, that it's very cyclical, and so having other industries that we work in can then like prop us up when some are down. And I'm aware that COVID's like a very once in a lifetime, hopefully, thing to happen. But having other industries really keeps it going. And I had a friend of mine who has an agency up in Budrum, and they do a lot of work for corporate groups in food and all sorts of industries. And COVID hardly impacted them at all, because they were working, at the right level with the right companies, and it just made me aware that there was space to improve.
Yeah, it's one of those things. Even though it doesn't, it's a one off. You once you go through that whole process, you don't want to go through that. You don't want to go through that again. Oh wow, this has been fascinating. So I want to try and switch gears a little bit and talk a bit about branding. There's still a few things about business that I want to go back to. So you've spent a lot of effort in helping businesses brand yourselves. What are some of the misconceptions that you find about branding? Because there's a lot of misconceptions.
I think it's really interesting. I can give you some very specific examples. I had a meeting with someone today who is talking to us about branding, and they started their company 2 years ago, and they've done reasonably well, but they're at a place where things are a bit of a mix. A bit of like, you look at their physical products, they don't look the same as the website. The website looks different to social media. That looks different again to their print pieces, and it's just a mess. And what happened was they started with this really small budget, which good on them to get this far, but they started with a really small budget. They used AI to create the brand, and by brand I mean they made a logo. They got it to choose some colors, and they got it to choose some fonts, and then they've just kind of worked with that. But there's no real thought to like what's the vision of the company. Like when they started, they had one product, whereas now they've got a product line. And so if you're thinking of like from a product line, you probably need to make sure you've got complementary colors that work all with each other, but then differentiate the different products from each other. And then you probably need to work out like how are you going to communicate that to your customers? What sort of messaging do you need? You probably need to start with your customers and work out, like why do your customers like need this product? Why does this product actually make their lives better? What do your customers value? And then working back from like, okay, well, if they value this and they need this, then these are probably some of the problems that you're solving with your product.
Yeah.
And once you kind of identify that, then that can be worked into the messaging and then subtly linked into the visuals.
Yeah.
And actually knowing who your customer is, like, you know, what age they are, where do they shop, what are the other stores that they buy things from, and what are their expectations from a brand like you, and making sure your brand is at the level that it needs to be for them. And so I think a lot of people will take that shortcut, and I get that, and I'm super empathetic to that because I understand that there's a certain budget, especially like in those hustle years when you're starting up a company. But then making that shift is a big change. I think another like one is companies. I'm dealing with another one. I'm just talking about clients at the moment. I'm dealing with another one.
Talk away. Yeah.
They've been around since the 60s.
Wow.
And they've got a successful business, but I think they're kind of like going backwards. They haven't told me this, but I think they're going backwards. And their logo, they probably updated that, like their logo and brand. I'm going to say maybe 15 years ago, maybe 20 years ago. It looks outdated, it looks old. And the problem with like companies that have been around for a long time is there's kind of this compound effect, whereas if your logo doesn't look current, you look old-fashioned because you've been around since the 60s, so you're old-fashioned, and their competitors around them are like really good. And I think they're going backwards, and so they're coming to us and they're like, oh, we need marketing to grow our business. And the conversation I'm having with them at the moment is, well, it doesn't matter how much marketing we do. People are going to go to your website and think you're old-fashioned and you can't actually serve their needs. And they kind of want a modern, current company, and they're just almost like scared to let go. Kind of like we were saying before about letting go to grow. Like that's sort of like what they need to do. They need to let go and just simplify. It's just way too complex. And I think that's another thing a lot of people do wrong with branding. They think it needs to be complex, but like really good design is simple, and the best design is always simple. And so just removing the complexity, replacing that with simplicity.
Because I think what happens is when you're starting out a business, you can get away with getting that AI or $5 logo. Heck, you can even get your nephew, your son or nephew to do it for you. But I think as you start to grow, there's got to be changes. How do you think a business should evolve their brand as they start to grow? What are some of the things you recommend to them? Okay, now that you're starting to scale past a certain point, these are the things you need to think about. These are the things you need to put in place in your brand in order to be able to have that credibility and able to be able to have that perception.
I think you need to use a professional to design your brand. Because you can spot it a mile away when you go to someone's website and it looks like a homemade job. And so I think people need to use a professional to design their brand, especially after a certain point. Like I understand there's that, and I'm really empathetic towards it. Again, a new company started, they're trying to pay themselves a wage. They're working full-time somewhere else.
You don't know whether it's going to work or not.
They're trying to quit their job. They've just invested money into starting a product or a service or an office lease or whatever that is, and they haven't got a lot of money for extra things, so they're doing as much as they can on like that kind of shoestring budget themselves. But I think getting a professional in, because a professional should be able to go like, what's your vision? Like, what do you actually want to achieve here? And once they understand what you actually want to achieve, then they can say, well, if you want to achieve this, these are some of the things that you need to do.
Is there certain milestones you recommend companies to start, especially those in the early days? Is there any sort of milestones you recommend? Maybe if you hit a certain income threshold, or if you've got this amount type of goals, that this is when you need to start to think, hey, it's time to outgrow. It's time for you to outgrow the logo your nephew did for you.
I think as soon as you can. Like we've got a lot of companies that we work with in that startup space that we'll either, some of them will take out a loan, or other to actually start the company, or some of them will have money in their pocket because they've just sold a company. So the sooner you can do that, the better, because you ultimately get one chance in getting it right. Like if you think of hospitality, you go to a restaurant and you have a terrible experience. You never go back and you tell everyone about it. But you go there and you have a great experience, you tell everyone. And I think what you see in the hospitality space is company, like the owners of these businesses will often start that company and put the brand and everything aside, but if you have they won't get the brand experience piece right. The food's a bit slow, it's a bit cold, bit too much salt, the waiters aren't attentive, whatever that brand experience piece looks like, they won't get that quite right, and then people won't go there.
Yeah.
And the only thing they can actually do is actually start a new brand.
Yeah.
And you'll often see them, like it's the same owners, but they've just renamed the company and it's offering something different, and they've worked out what the mistake is. And that's ultimately like what a brand is. It's like there's three parts. There's like your brand experience, so how you treat people, and you got very different brand experiences. Like if you walk into say like Louis Vuitton to go buy a t-shirt, there's like 5 t-shirts there, I think there's a security guard out the front that's like just to let you know that it's expensive.
It's an expensive t-shirt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then you go to Kmart.
Yeah.
It's like this big circle rack.
I know.
And they're jammed on these plastic coat hangers.
I know. You can barely get anything.
Yeah. But that's like budget conscious shoppers, everyday low prices. So it's a very different brand experience. But then, and so there's 3 parts: brand experience, which is how you treat people, how they experience it in stores, that type of thing, how they experience it online, and then you've got your visual, so your logo, your fonts, your colors, any patterns, and then your messaging as well. So that's ultimately what a brand is. Those 3 things, and those 3 things just control what customers say about you, because like your brand isn't what you say it is or what I say it is; it's what your customers say it is.
Yeah.
And good brands do that just by getting those 3 things right.
Yeah. How can businesses that are, I guess, growing and scaling, how can they leverage some of the things that the bigger guys are doing? I mean, you've got your iconic brands, your Nikes, your Coca-Colas and stuff like that. What do you think some of the smaller guys can be able to take advantage of, leverage some of that stuff? Or do you think maybe that's a bit of an overkill? Maybe you should try and, I guess, play the brand to where you are in the business.
What's really interesting is how that there's this, I can't remember the name of the company, but I was reading about it the other day.
Yeah.
There's this athletic wear company over in America.
Yeah.
They focus a lot on women's wear and getting women in their campaigns and women in all of their marketing. Anyway, they've started this new campaign where they're calling out Nike. And I thought of that because you just mentioned Nike.
Yeah.
They're calling out Nike for Nike not using enough women in their campaigns. And so what that method is actually called ad busting. And what that does is it takes the brand equity from Nike and applies it to your company. So basically what they're trying to do is get people to talk about them and Nike in the same sentence. Mm-hmm. So that's like there's so many tactics you can use, and that's one of them. Yeah.
Okay. What other, do you have any other like common tactics that someone listening to this podcast could say, okay, I want to give you takeaways? Obviously, the one more, they can always come back to you. What are some other, maybe, I guess the most common tactics you've seen that someone can start to leverage today for them to grow their brand? Just
really good storytelling. And I'll use Nike as an example again, just because it's iconic and people listening or watching this can see it. But like it's I think their campaign message is something around finding your greatness. And the Boston Marathon happened not that long ago, but like recently. And right after that, I think this was like in November or December last year, Nike came out with this series of videos of people just like limping, wearing like work clothes, so like wearing a suit and just kind of limping across the street or limping downstairs because they'd just finished running like a marathon. And it was like find your greatness, and it was really about just like telling the story of what it's like to actually be an everyday person and a marathon runner. And I think it was just super timely and super relevant to like what had just happened and gets people talking. Yeah. And even just like brand activations, like there was this company over in, I think it was Ireland. Yeah. They make beer, and there's kind of this belief over there that beer that's imported is better. Yeah. And so they put this like, on their lager, they put this like label on this lager, and which was theirs, and they had this fake label where it was basically their brand name spelt backwards. Yeah. And they told people it was Spanish, and they did this. It was a Spanish beer, and they did this kind of activation where they were giving out the free beer and filming people's reaction to it, and them saying, "Wow, I love this imported beer. It's incredible." And then the labels weren't actually stuck on that hard, and they got them to peel off the label, and just like seeing people's reactions. And so like the whole premise of that was just to get people to realize that like the beer's actually really good here. You don't need to like get this imported stuff. So and again, that's just really good storytelling.
Yeah.
But I mean, like that probably ties back into their strategy as well.
Yeah.
What we were talking about earlier, like their strategy was probably like, we're getting killed, you know, in like the beer import market. What are some things we can do? And there's probably a whole range of things. Like they could probably do some ads. They could probably have some landing pages, some websites, some promos, and they could do some activations and things like that to get people talking.
Yeah. Storytelling. I just wanted to just dive into that for a little bit. Because I think a lot of businesses, especially those mid-sized businesses, I mean, they don't really know how to lean in their story or find that narrative in terms of that compelling story that can help them either tell what they do or find ways to rally people towards a certain cause. What do you recommend for someone who is kind of like going through the whole process and saying, yeah, but I'm not famous. I don't have like, I don't have like, you know, I'm not like Nike where, you know, we are aligning to people who do a sports or stuff like that. What do you recommend for someone to sort of find that story within themselves that they can now use to use that as a narrative, I guess, to rally people towards a certain cause?
I think a lot of that, again, goes back to strategy. Like, what are you trying to achieve?
Yeah.
Who are your customers?
Yeah.
Like, okay, if you're trying to achieve this is your customers and this is what your customers need.
Yeah.
Then these are probably some of the content pillars you
Yeah.
could be talking about.
Yeah.
And then, you know, you can literally jump online and look at other ways people talk about those content pillars. And then you could look at different like storytelling techniques and kind of like weave in some of that and just have a play around with different ways of doing it.
Yeah. Awesome.
You know, like, I don't know if you saw like last week or the week before, what was that TV show? They had this glass box in like Grand Central Station.
Yeah.
And
is that showing Netflix? I forgot the name. Is it Severance?
Severance, that's
Severance,
the one.
yeah, Severance, yeah.
Yeah, so I saw season 1 and I saw that and it prompted me that season 2 is coming up. But that's like a really...
Is it any good?
It's really good.
Okay.
So the premise of the show is that you get this little thing injected into your brain, and when you go into your workplace and you go up a certain floor in the elevator, you can't remember anything from before that. But you can only remember what happens in that space. Anyway, so it's called Severance. But the whole, like, it was a really good brand activation, a lot more expensive than, you know, that beer one, but, you know, obviously a lot bigger business. But they had a glass box in Grand Central Station where they had people doing acting as if they're on the set. And so everyone's stopping, looking at that, and that creates like a really good scene there for those people. But then all of a sudden people are taking videos and it's going viral. You knew about it. I knew about it.
Yeah, I knew about that campaign.
And so like people like me who have watched it are like getting excited for season 2, and they're telling people like you to watch it.
Fair
watch
enough.
season 1. So like that's like another really simple example of just storytelling.
That's awesome. I'm gonna drag you back into business
Sure.
a little bit. One thing that I found really brave about you was during COVID, when everyone was saying that offices are gone, the future of work is remote, you took on like a massive office. Like you took on like a big, like you are out there building an office.
Yeah.
And I'm just thinking, my goodness, this guy's either crazy or he's got like courage. What was your conviction back then to sort of taking on like such a big undertaking, setting up a big office and stuff?
A little bit of column A, a little bit of column B, for sure.
Yeah.
We were in the office that we're in now. Yeah. So it's about 300 square meters. We were actually downstairs beforehand, and we had a gym above us. And what had happened was our lease was getting close to expiring, and I knew that our landlord was keen to keep us. And I didn't want to stay below the gym because they made a lot of noise. And so I asked him to ask the gym if they would swap leases and if the landlord would pay for our fit out. And so the landlord paid for almost like 90% of our fit out.
Oh, wow.
So it makes me sound like I'm brave that I got this office space in the middle of COVID. But there were 6 months there where we didn't have to pay for rent because we worked at home and they were doing the fit out. Because they had to, you know, pull our office apart. Move the gym downstairs, do the fit out for the gym, and then do our fit out, and then we got it upstairs. So we worked from home from 6 months, not paying rent, and then moved into the office when it was almost done. And they paid for 90% of it. We negotiated a few things that they didn't want to pay for that were a bit extra, but we did most of it and had an interior designer help with the design. So I think from a business point of view, like it was just a really good opportunity to
Yeah.
negotiate, because I knew no one was taking on leases, like commercial leases back then. And so we had an opportunity to not pay rent for a while and negotiate. And in my head, I thought, surely this COVID's not going to go forever.
No.
And if it does go forever and everyone dies, then I die too anyway. I've got nothing to lose. So,
Yeah. So what's been your approach now that obviously COVID is well and truly over? Are you more of a remote person? Are you more of like, let's go work in the office? What have you seen as the benefits of either or?
Yeah, we've tried a few different variations of it.
Yeah.
And I don't like I go into the office every day.
Yeah.
And there's a couple of people as well that go into the office every day, because certain people just like that.
Yeah.
There's some people who don't like going in as much. Some people like a bit somewhere in the middle. So I asked the team to come in 2 days a week, and then 3 days a week they can spend at home if they want to. And the only day I ask everyone to come in all together is on Monday, because we have our WIP meeting, work in progress, where we go through what are we working on this week, and what are the key meetings this week, key meetings next week that we need to hear. And it's just a good chance to have everyone on the same page and get us all focused. And I just find that day, a lot of conversations happen that just set up the rest of the week. And so that's the important day. And then one other day they come into the office and they choose what day that is. So I've got some people that will do 3 days a week in the office because they just don't want to be home 3 days a week. And I give them a bit of flexibility. Also changed like our start and finish times. It used to be you start at 8, finish at 4:30, hour lunch break. And then I looked at the award and realised they didn't need to do an hour lunch break. And so I gave them the choice of half an hour if they wanted that. Because under the award, they have to have a break. No one wants to take more than like half an hour break because they'd rather go home earlier. And so now, half an hour breaks, and people choose what time they start. So they under the award, they can start anywhere between 7 a.m. and 10 a.m. and then finish anywhere between 3 and 6. And so they choose their start and finish time. And then it was a bit of getting used to working in that space, because there's sort of like overlap and stuff like that. But some people just love starting at 10. Other people love starting, earlier.
The gamers, the people who spend.
Well, I tend to find the people that have kids. Like starting early.
Actually, oh wow.
Yeah, because like especially young kids, if they're taking them to childcare, they go to childcare, and then they come in. They can come in early. They're in the office at like 7:30. They're finishing at 3:30, picking up the kids, go home, dinner, bath time, all of that's done. As opposed to like finishing at 5 or 4, going home at 6 or 7.
Yeah. What has been as we start to come to an end? What has been some of your biggest lessons, and this could be some of the challenges you've had to overcome, or things that you've had to learn in the process? It could not be challenge, it could be something like either challenges or something that like aha moments. If you're if you're looking at someone who is maybe a few steps behind you, or someone who's a little bit further down the line that is looking to scale their business to get to the point where you are, what are some of the lessons you've learned, good or bad, and what would you prefer to pass on to someone?
I'd say that you're only as good as your consistency, in that like you've got to show up every day and actually do the work and have a plan and execute on that plan. And if you do that regularly, you'll grow your business. If you don't do that regularly, you do the opposite of growing your business. And the other one is, I'd say like each customer served well leads to another one. So if you look after a customer and do the right thing by them, give them good advice, don't overcharge, be prompt with your service, do what you say you'll do. Like they'll tell other people about them, you and your service and your team and what you do, and it's another easy way to grow the company as well.
How has things like technology, AI, or automation and that kind of stuff been good? Have you been able to sort of utilize that for your business?
It's been great. I mean, it's been great because 15 years ago, people didn't really want social media for a business. Whereas now, like when we're doing brand work, we're considering what are some of the assets and templates that we need to create for them for that. So it means there's a lot more that we're doing in that space, and social media being like really hungry for assets. There's often like a lot of templates that need to be created to help companies tell their story. And then with AI, I think it's like really interesting at the moment. I saw Coke last year did a really weird thing with their Christmas ad. they were recreating this ad from the 60s, and it just was poorly executed, and people looked like lifeless, and it wasn't good. Like, it was a really bad example. But then Adidas did this thing where they showed like this pair of shoes that hadn't been created yet, made a bit of an ad around that, and people got pumped for this pair of shoes. And I was thinking, looking at that that's actually going to be like a really good way for brands to just test out products without having to go down the path of either, you know, making a physical piece and then having that filmed and getting photography around that and getting videography, and like they can actually go straight into AI and get that look and feel right, provided they can get AI to do what it needs to do, and then they can push that out there and get feedback, and then if it works, then they can bring it to life. And so you can kind of see that brands could iterate in that space. And I think as well, like just Sora just coming out recently, I can see that you know, if you could I could almost see it getting to a point where a brand has, like, let's say a real estate agent, for example, they've got like a lot of assets that they need created. Like a photo shoot might come back from a home, and it might be that it automatically has some sort of API connected to Sora with a whole bunch of prompts just to say like, okay, we've got this room here, we need people walking through this room. You know, and then all of a sudden you know, you just open up your Dropbox folder and there's like 30 videos. Out of those 30, there's like 5 or 6 that are good. You apply your brand messaging to that. You've got like some really good ways to tell your story. So I think there's going to be some things that are in there that are just speeding up things for marketers and brands and companies, and it'll just help them tell their story.
What are some things you're really excited about in terms of like it could be the business, about the future of the industry or the business, or some things you're excited, or some things you've got on the works, so you're thinking, oh yeah, this I can't wait to see some of these things come to.
Yeah, we've got a few like really big projects on the go, and we've got a few like really big projects that, fingers crossed, will get over the line, which are exciting because like we can really help them, and it's just exciting to be pushing the agency to like another level, where you are doing work that you weren't doing before, and it's just I think I'm also really excited about a lot of the workshops that we're running, a lot of the like brand discovery sessions that we have, just to help brands identify who they are, and just really helping on a level that we weren't helping before, as well as like a lot of the speaking that I've got coming up, which is going to be exciting too.
Yeah, that's exciting. Any brave prediction? Don't worry, we won't hold you into it if they don't age well. Any prediction, or it could not be prediction. It could be something that you think, okay, if you want to grow your business, if you want to evolve your brand this year, these are the things that I suggest you take advantage of this year.
I reckon there's going to be a lot of brands are going to use AI to make user-generated content. You know, like if you think of it at the moment, like you wanted to get, like, say, I don't know, like a Rode microphone. You know, you wanted to get that with someone speaking on that, you'd have to give that to them, film them, all of that stuff. If you can get AI to do that, you know, like I can, you know, then all of a sudden Rode's got like all this great content that they can just put out in the social media feed, and I can see that being something that people just aren't doing enough, like thinking enough that I could just use this for user generated content. If I can get my product in there right and get the prompt right and get the right platform. Awesome. I think that's going to be interesting to see how that pans out this year.
I think that's going to be a big one as well, especially using avatars, like all these
definitely
all these AI type avatars. I was watching a YouTube video the other day. There's this lady who talks a lot about AI, and I'm watching the video. And initially, when I was watching, I wasn't like watching it. I was just listening to it passively. And it's not until I looked over. It's not until she said, "Oh, and this is my AI avatar doing this video." I was like, "Oh shit, that's."
I think I saw the one you were talking about. Yeah.
And it was so the technology has come out so far, and to think about it, that this is the worst it will ever be. You know, that's what's scary.
A friend of mine, he actually has a podcast like this over in Sydney, and he just started using this platform called Riverside FM. And it's blown him away because he was using Opus Clip before that. And he's like, I just film it and put the feed straight in there. I don't have to touch it. And the whole bunch of videos come back. And he's like, I know it sounds like a lot, but I was having to drag a file into Opus Clip and then download them, now I'm not having to do that anymore. So it's like AI is already surpassing AI.
It is already surpassing. It's the same. Even the video editing software that I'm using to edit this podcast, CapCut, it does that for me straight away. I don't even have to go do anything else.
There you go.
There you go. So Is there any other thing that you wanted to talk about before we left? Maybe something that that you think we should have talked about, but we haven't really mentioned?
I think we were talking about it before about letting go to grow. I think that's probably one of
letting
the
go to grow.
biggest pieces of advice for anyone with a brand,
Yeah.
or if you're looking to evolve your brand,
Yeah.
at some point you need to let go
Absolutely.
and let someone else take it on to let it grow. And if
Yeah.
you're a company owner and you're wanting to grow, like, you need to let go of things. You can't be a control freak. You can't be doing everything yourself. You've got to let go if you want to grow. Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome. Thank you so much for coming in, Steve. I really appreciate your insights today. And where can people find you? Where can people connect with you?
Identitymarketing.com.au is the company website, or if you want to find me on Instagram, steve.osborn, or speaking website, steveosborn.com.au.
Awesome.
Cool.
Thank you so much.